I get asked a lot of questions about cooking on an uni. The number one question is probably, how do I make good dough? And the number two question is always, what else can I cook in the uni? Now to cook steak inside the uni, you're gonna need a cast iron pan. Ooni has a variety of different pans. Today I am going to be using the Grizzler plate with the raised edges to emulate a grill type experience because I am cooking for my family tonight, and that's 3 of us. And the steaks that I will be cooking are a New York strip, a baseball sirloin, and last but not least, a terrace major. This is one of the most tender cuts on the steak outside of the filet mignon, which comes from the beef tenderloin. It makes a really, really, really nice cut of beef. So one of the most important steps is to let your steaks rest at room temperature for about an hour. Otherwise, if you put a cold steak inside the hot oven, the middle's gonna remain rare while the outside gets cooked. While they're sitting at room temp, fire up your uni and put your cast iron in there. If you're using propane, this can go right in while you light. If you're using something like wood or charcoal or even pellets, wait about 10 minutes before putting the cast iron in. You wanna be shooting for a surface reading on your cast iron at about 600 degrees Fahrenheit or around 316 degrees Celsius. As soon as the pan is preheated, that's when we're going to season our steaks. What we're going to do is take a little bit of oil. Don't use butter. Butter's gonna burn really quickly in such a hot cast iron. Any sort of cooking oil will do. All right, next what we're going to do is take just regular kosher salt and liberally season one side of the steak. We're giving ourselves a nice natural barrier that's gonna help us have a nice release so it's not going to stick. And you may be thinking, wow, Josh, that is a lot of salt, but that's my secret to cooking excellent steak on the uni. Wow, we're at 600 degrees, so you know what that means. Let's get the steaks on and cook. So you wanna put the thickest, heartiest steak towards the back. That's gonna get most of the heat. So for me, that's gonna be my New York strip. Remember, put salt side down. Next, I'm gonna put my terrace major on, salt side down, and my sirloin. Now back into the uni for about 5 minutes before we touch anything. All right, so what we're going to do is flip our steaks. They've been in there for about 4 to 5 minutes. I'm gonna start with the steaks that are closest to the heat source that are in the back. What I'll do is I'll move it to a side of the cast iron that hasn't been used yet, just so I can suck up most of that heat. The goal is to take the steaks off when they're about 10 degrees away from the final temperature that you prefer. So I like my steak at about 135 degrees internal. So I'm gonna cook that to about 125 degrees and then let it rest. The temperature will carry up and make a perfectly cooked steak. So the reason that we are doing salt only is that these ovens get really, really hot and we don't want any seasonings to burn. Now, salt can handle really high temperatures. So what we're going to do is we're going to season it with a traditional beef rub when they are done cooking. So I'm going to do the temperature probe one last time on the steak that was closest to the heat source, that New York strip. That is perfect. So let me take this out. So I'm going to do a quick temperature read of the steak right where I want it. So I'm gonna take the New York strip off. I'm gonna let it rest on a clean plate. I'm gonna do a quick temperature on the rest of these. I'm gonna give them both just a few more minutes. The sirloin, looking very good. The terrace major has a little bit longer to go, so I'm gonna put it back in for just a few more minutes. So what's important is as soon as your steaks come off, while it's still hot, you wanna sprinkle on your extra seasoning to both sides. You wanna let these sit for about 10 minutes before cutting into them to make sure all of the juices redistribute back into the meat and you have a really, really excellent bite. All right, so now that the last steak is off, it is at temperature. I can remove it from the cast iron. This is one of my favorite cuts of steak, this terrace major. Hit it with our beef rub, and again, let that sit on there, 10 minutes, slice in and enjoy. Just a quick recap of what we did. We seasoned one side of the steak with kosher salt, put it into a preheated cast iron that was in the uni oven. As soon as 4-minute timer elapsed, we flipped it over, waited about 3 to 4 more minutes before taking our first temperature reading. You wanna make sure your steak at that point is about 10 degrees away from where you're looking to serve it. For me, I like to serve my steaks at around 135 degrees Fahrenheit, so I pull them off about 10 degrees before that at 125 degrees Fahrenheit. Once they get pulled off, that's when we can season them with our steak or beef rub and let them sit for 10 minutes, let the juices redistribute, and then you're gonna have one happy family. I'm challenging you now to get out there and cook steak in your uni. I would love to see your photos. You can find me on Instagram at TrueCraftBBQ, at True Craft Barbecue. So get out there, start cooking, and let me see those steaks. Have a good night, everybody. I know I am.